Alright everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil. In this video, we're going to rate the entire Rebel faction. Strap yourselves in for a longer video, guys. Right now, go ahead, go in the comments, let me know what faction you want to do next. The rules for this, guys, the rules for this video, we're not just rating them how they perform as Rebels, we're rating how they perform inside of the entire game. So keep that in mind, that I don't want to just say, oh, this character, you can't use them with, you don't use them with Rebels. It's how they perform in the game as total, and by in the game as total, we're looking at things like territory battles, territory wars, Grand Arena, ships, etc. So make sure you guys like and subscribe, comment down below. Again, we want to get to 5,000 subscribers. If we hit 5,000, Wampa will hit Relic 8, guys, because Wampa is king, and more importantly, Wampa's basic has 100% offense against Rebel targets because he hates these guys. So let's go ahead, guys. Let's get into the list. So we're going to start off with trash. Bodhi, Rook, and Lobot are literal trash. They are so bad. They don't really have any use. They don't have teams. Anything that they do, somebody does better, right? Anything you can do, someone else can do better. So, literal trash. Alright, then we got Hoth Rebel Soldier here. If it wasn't for Hoth territory battles, this dude would be on that literal trash level. He is a tank, but you don't really... There's better Rebel tanks in the game. Yeah. That's it. I mean, at one point, having Hoth Rebel Soldier was sort of like having your Geonosians or Shock T clones because you needed him for those combat missions on Hoth. With Geonosis territory battles, Rise of the Empire, he's just really losing that value in the game. Alright, Farm Boy Luke. So like my trig teacher used to say, the nicest thing my trig teacher could say about me at times was that I was in his class. It's the same thing with Luke Skywalker, Farm Boy, man. The nicest thing I can say about him is he's part of the characters to get Commander Luke Skywalker. Other than that, he's useless. I mean, he's horrendous, terrible, but again, the nicest thing I'll say about him, you're part of, the team to get probably my favorite legendary character. So, there you go. Farm Boy Luke, guys, just horrendous. And his Omicron and Zetas, I mean, awful. Maybe when we get Red 5, we know he's going to be the pilot because nobody has this character leveled up, but still a long way out from that. All right, next we have Chase, Sharut Imwe, and Baze Malbus, guys. They were, and you guys love the way I say this because it always ends up in the comments, they were meta at one point. I think other people pronounce it as meta, but I prefer meta because I'm the one posting videos on YouTube, so I get to decide how I pronounce things. But yeah, they were meta at one point, guys. They were meta, and it was awesome to watch them just destroy teams. I mean, they were 2v5ing teams. Baze is getting a little bit more love inside of the AdRad team now at times, but I think K2 is a better slot for that. So they're down here. They don't really have that use. There's nothing they're needed for. So they're characters who just kind of sit around at this point, and it's unfortunate because they are really good. I should say they were really good. Stormtrooper Han, Princess Leia on the list. They are needed for Commander Luke Skywalker. Leia's a galactic legend, but outside of that, they need Omicrons or Sonastaros to get any good use out of them. And to me, that's not indicative of them being good, and more so Sana or the Omicrons making them better. So they deserve to be a little bit lower on this list. Again, just unfortunate, but that's the way the game shakes out. Again, even with Sana lifting them up, I don't think they get more important than some of the other characters on this list. So next we have Lando and Captain Han. The reason I have Lando a step above these two characters, Lando does have a decent leadership. So they gain a little bit of speed and critical damage. What I like about his leadership is you can use him with Han and Chewbacca early on. If you don't have Beskar Armor Mando, you don't have, why am I blanking right now? Dash Rendar. And in a 3v3 scenario, you can use Lando as that leader, as a leader for those two characters. Give them more speed, more critical damage, which helps both of them. They're going to just hit really, really hard. And then Captain Han is here because he does have a Scoundrel tag and a Revive. That Revive can be really, really good. And when used with the next character on our list, Rebel Officer Leia Organa inside of territory battles with her Omicron, Captain Han can be really, really important. Rolo deserves that shout on her own level because she does have the Omicron to lift some of those other rebels in territory battles. She can be pretty decent. She's got this AoE is actually really, really dangerous because it's damage 10 times to random enemy targets. But the amount of times that she's held because somebody tries to solo this team And if that goes off, that's 10 times damage to that player, to that character. And if she hits hard enough, they're dead. And that's, yeah, it's comical to watch. Like, I've had this hold against Wampa before. People don't know how to use their Wampa. Bring it against this team. She gets going, and it's game over. All right, next, guys, we've got Hoth Rebel Scout and POW. These two see some action with the Rebel Fighter team. The reason they're lower, even though that Rebel Fighter team is really good, we've got them lower because they're not pilots. If they were pilots, they could be higher on the list, but they're not pilots. They're not required for anything. Just, they're going to see a lot more action than like your Rebel characters here because that Mon Mothma team is really, really good. They run a turn meter train, but unfortunately in 3v3, these two normally get the boot out because there's better options to use. All right, we've got the first three of our Phoenix characters here, Zeb, Kanan, and Chopper. They're just, if they weren't pilots, you'd be on that level with like maybe Farm Boy Luke. They're just not that great. There's, their ships are good. That's the reason they're really at this point. They do have decent ships. To me, that yes, you get Thrawn, you get Emperor Palpatine, but outside of that, the nicest thing you could say is that they get you stuff. But they're pilots, so they deserve to be higher than the rest of these characters because you do use their ships quite a bit. Just outside of that, terrible. All right, next we've got Cara Dune, Pathfinder, and Bistan. So these guys see more action than your Hoth Rebel Scout and POW because Pathfinder and Bistan are pilots. Their Bistan G-Wing is a very good ship. I actually think it gets a little bit more use than your Phoenix ships from this. I'd say early on with your Rebel fleets, it's a better ship. I think later in the game, people are going to use the Phoenix more because of Admiral Raddus, but that's not because they're better, simply because it's the way that fleet works. Cara Dune, she's needed for Beskar Mando. She's got a Scoundrel tag, she's got the Rebel tag, and Rebel Fighter, so there's a lot of different ways to use her that, in my personal opinion, elevate her a little bit to, a level that maybe these characters down here aren't quite at. And then Pathfinder and Bistan, they have the Rogue One tag. And that Rogue One tag is really good, along with the Rebel Fighter, which means they can be used with Admiral Raddus or with Mon Mothma and get some decent uses out of them. So they deserve a shout above these Phoenix characters. All right, next we got Wedge and Biggs. It was hard for me to put them above these characters right here. The reason I have Wedge and Biggs together is because Wedge has a really good leadership ability. Rebel allies, 30 offense, 15 health, 10 speed on a critical, or 10% turn meter on a critical hit. But it's the special shout out with Biggs he gets where they gain offense and speed for allies, and Biggs is going to gain them as well. They both have ships. Biggs' ship definitely a little bit better than Wedge, but I think early on when you get Jedi Master Luke and you don't quite have these guys at decent gear levels, they're a very important team together. I use them pretty much still every GAC. I actually use Wedge lead a lot. Again, this is another leadership that you can use with Han and Chewie if necessary. Just something that I think can, trip people up a little bit. They're a pretty decent team. And I think because their ships are much more accessible early on, they deserve a shout out above these characters in this list right here. Again, that might be a little bit harsh, but that's where I have them. Next, we have the Phoenix leader, Hera Syndulla. She definitely deserves to be in a category of her own because the Phoenix Squadron without her doesn't have a leadership. There's no way to use the Phoenix Squadron as a team without Hera, so she's the glue to kind of hold them all. She has a requirement for profundity, and that kind of elevates her above some of the rest of these guys where you can make teams without any of these characters. You can't make a Phoenix team without her, so that makes her extremely important. And again, being on the profundity just really makes her a better character, in my opinion, that in terms of usefulness, that's where her usefulness is that, you need that for Thrawn. Again, it might be a little bit high here, but I think it's indicative of not just the profundity, but the leadership. I think that, the Phoenix lead, there are ways to use that team, and if they ever do get a lot better, Hera's the leadership. All right, next we have Fulcrum Ahsoka Tano. This is a bit of a hot take because right now she's definitely not this high on the list. She doesn't deserve to be this high. But with Seer coming into the game, Cal Kestis now, those unaligned Force users getting love, I think it's going to be really, really important to get Fulcrum even if you don't have her Omicron, I think in GAC there'll still be a lot of uses for this team. And I think she'll kind of be a part of that. And then obviously in Territory Wars right now, she's amazing and going to get even more amazing with Cal and Seer. So just, it's where I end up seeing her be at. One of those that, yes, she's going to be Omicron dependent, going to be very team dependent, but once you have her there, she's the linchpin that she's going to be amazing. All right, next we have Sabine, Ezra, and K2, where they're actually useful. Sabine has the Mandalorian tag, which she's that normal, she's like the 6th man for Phoenix that kind of kick her out and throw her with Mandalorians. She's still really good with Mandalorians. I'm curious to see how she performs in the Krayt Dragon Raid. I think she could be a big part of the Mandalorian faction there. Then you have Ezra Bridger, who is, even though Kanan has the Jedi tag as well, Ezra is definitely the more useful one of the two. He hits a lot harder. He's got an assist. Like I think his kit really benefits Jedi a lot more than Kanan's does. And again, pilots, all 3 of these are pilots. And then K2, because Cassian has the special synergy with him, he's the Rogue One tag, Rebel Fighter. A lot of uses for him. Again, being another pilot. Pilots really get a lot of love, guys. You need to understand that pilots deserve those special shouts because they are that important to the game. Again, K2, I think, is probably one of the better tanks, if not the best tank for the Admiral Raddus team. But even outside of that, him and Cassian with Mon Mothma are both good, especially inside of 3v3 GAC. R2-D2, probably the plug-and-play king. He's got the droid, Galactic Republic, Rebel, and Resistance synergy. He's got special stats for each of them depending on who he's with. And then he's going to share his statistics with droid, Galactic Republic, Rebel, and Resistance. So one of the really big uses I don't think people always put together, if you mod him for offense and stick him with Rey's going to get 10% of his offense, which that can all of a sudden add up to some decent numbers. It's going to make Rey hit harder. Just a really good character that I think we sometimes forget just how many teams he fits into. You've got the Padme, Shorty droids, Rebels, and then Resistance using him with BB-8. It's going to boost turn meter. Just really good plug and play and deserves that shout. If you don't know how to use R2-D2, it's unfortunate because you are missing out on somebody that just slots into so many different teams. All right, Admiral Akbar. He's your fleet commander for a very long time as a rebel, and I think that even though in the end game you might not use him as much, early on he's one of the more important rebels because he's the fleet commander. But we have to understand that Raddus is in the game. Outside of fleets, he does struggle. He has a GAC Omicron. It's not the greatest. Definitely one I wish I had back. It's unfortunate because I like Akbar, but I really don't think he's got enough outside of the fleet to rate him any higher on this list. Again, I think R2-D2 is a better character, but because of how long you use Akbar as a fleet commander, he deserves to be higher on the list. All right, Cassian Andor. Cassian as a ship, right? He's the pilot. He's Rebel Fighter, Rogue One, Rebel. He's got all of those tags. He's got the, he's obviously necessary for the profundity, but he's just really useful. That he normally can get kicked to the curb in 3v3 GAC with AdRad, but in 5v5 he's a staple. I use his ship a lot. It's really good. One of those characters that I think, because of all the utility he has, he deserves to be on this list, and just somebody that I think a lot of us will be, you'd be remiss if you weren't using him regularly once you do get him, because he is a good character. All right, Old Ben. Old Ben is more powerful than you can possibly imagine. At least that's what he tells us. The thing about Old Ben, he's got the Jedi tag. And that's where you're going to use him a lot more as a Jedi than a Rebel. But again, you can use him with Rebels and it's not a bad thing. But the Jedi tag is really where he shines. You can use him with Jedi Master Luke. A lot of people love to use him with Starkiller to good effect, which I wholeheartedly agree with. He's a solid character. I think especially where he does a lot of really good things for me is in Conquest. Because when you have those no attacker, no support, full Jedi teams, you can use Old Ben and kind of, flush out those additional slots. Same thing with Rebels where they're like, oh, don't use any attackers. Well, you can put Old Ben as, he's got that Rebel tag, he's a tank. He's not a terrible character. I think he really does get some hate at times because, he doesn't hit hard, but he's got turn meter removal, ability blocks, offense down. There's a lot of really unique things in his kit that I think get overlooked, so Old Ben definitely deserves to be high on this list. All right, Mon Mothma, next one here. I mean, guys, Mon Mothma, you're always using Mon Mothma. Always using Mon Mothma. As soon as you get her, you are using Mon Mothma. And it's crazy. She really is a great character. Her team is amazing. Again, with the solid Mon Mothma team, you're going to run trains around everybody. The biggest thing I'll say with her, because she reminds me of Hera a little bit, just that her team is that much better. Outside of the Rebel fighters, outside of her leadership, she's not that good. But with her team, she's so important and takes characters who have no use outside of her team and makes them amazing. So she definitely deserves to be higher on this list in the game because the Mon Mothma team, regardless of if you use it in GAC or not, or people are like, oh, it's trash, all of us use it. Let's be honest. All right, Kyle Katarn. He is a step above Mon Mothma. He's the lifter. He's really what makes the Mon Mothma team click. He's also got the Jedi tag, and he's a pilot. And sometimes I'm a little bit harsh on Kyle. I think where my harshness comes from, he and Old Ben kind of play that role of, in the PvE world, you can use them with your Jedi when necessary. His ship is really good, especially early game. His ship is amazing. If we get more Rebel ships, I think his ship only gets more important, right? So that could potentially make him better. The big thing here, he's got the Jedi Rebel fighter tag, just, again, filling out those major tags, fitting into a couple of different teams really, really well. So I can't believe Commander Luke is this low on the list, but he is. If you guys have seen me before, he's probably the worst member of his team because outside of it, he doesn't really have a home. So Commander Luke gets better and elevates his team, but his team can be used without him. He has a leadership. He doesn't have a ship, but his team, with him on it, is better than this Rebel fighter team with Kyle. And I think that's why I have Commander Luke Skywalker, at this point. He does deserve that special shout. He's my favorite, maybe a little bit of bias here. He's my favorite legendary character, so yeah, you gotta respect him. All right, Jyn Erso. Jyn is above Commander Luke because Jyn is the, 1-2 punch with Admiral Raddus. Like in 3v3 GAC, it's Adrad, Jyn, and then somebody else. You don't ever take her out of that team. She's a pilot on Cassian's U-Wing. She also has a leadership ability, which is, she's the only leadership for those Rogue One allies. She's got really good, she's got a decent, what's the wording here? She has a decent unique ability where they're immune to buff immunity. She's immune to stun, gains 10% potency each time she critically hits an enemy. She's a good character. I think especially with Admiral Raddus now, she's an amazing character. I think she's really just elevates that team, makes them do what they do best, which is destroy us and make us sad. All right, 3PO and Chewie, next one on the list here. I think is this the top 5 now? He's a droid and a rebel. The droid tag here helps him a lot when you need that full team of droids he can kind of fit in. His unique ability, though, with rebels, he's going to gain 40% of the leader's max health, protection, offense, all this stuff. And then other allies gain half of that amount. He's going to assist when people are, attacking. So a low gear 3PO and Chewie, just keep this in mind. He's going to gain 40% of Luke's health, protection, offense, all this stuff. So you're basically making 3PO and Chewie a couple relic levels higher, a couple gear, multiple gear levels higher, even if he's at gear 8, and you have a relic Commander Luke or a relic leader, he's gaining so much that it's just amazing. Right, next we have the God of the Ewoks here, C-3PO. C-3PO's here, similar to R2-D2. He's got 4 tags, Droid, Galactic Republic, Rebel, Resistance. I think that's where I really see him, that he fits in with that Padme team, the Rebels team, Commander Luke Skywalker team, Resistance. He's even a droid. So it gives you a plethora of ways to use him in some of those other PvE game modes, like Galactic Challenges where you need Resistance or droids. He's really, really good. Again, shines with Rebels, but with Ewok allies, he does, they do inflict expose on basic abilities with him. So if there's ever a point where Ewoks can get really good and maybe C-3PO does some, interesting stuff with them, we don't know. Primarily used with that Commander Luke team that just makes them really, really good. All right, top 3 now. Adrad here, the best fleet commander in the game. He's definitely a better fleet commander than... I put the Profundity like a hair above Executor, because I think Executor may be a little bit more difficult on defense. The thing that I have with Adrad and the Profundity, a 4-star Profundity will deal with a 7-star Executor easier than a 4-star Executor will deal with a 7-star Profundity. And that's the difference for me. Simply coming down to the viability of it at low stars versus Executor, I think that's what makes the Profundity better. Again, that's just one man's opinion, but that's where Admiral Raddus belongs. Even outside of that, his team is amazing. The Rogue One team in GAC is really good with the Omicron, and I just really love, this team. I think they're a fantastic addition to the game, and I love that they are that good. So then the top 2 guys, it had to be them, but they're together because they're the MVPs, they're the GOATs, they're the, when you think of Star Wars, you think of Han Solo and Chewbacca. They are the duo together. I love these guys. Obviously, like being, an original trilogy fan, that I am. I mean, Han and Chewbacca, just that's, those are my, I got so, a little bit too much information here maybe, but I cried like a baby when Chewie got his medal. Like the only part of the sequel trilogy that was amazing was Chewie getting his medal. That was like the most touching, heartwarming moment of the entire thing for me, was watching that. But yeah, Han and Chewie, they're the MVPs, right? That's why they're the MVP. That's why they're the GOAT. The GOAT. Yeah, you guys know that meme. But in all seriousness, guys, they're smugglers, scoundrels, and rebels. They fit in so well. They've got probably the second best ship. The Millennium Falcon is probably the second best ship in the game. I think Houndstooth pretty firmly has the number 1 spot, but the Millennium Falcon is so good. It's a linchpin inside Profundity and even the Admiral Akbar fleet. They can be used in so many different ways. You can use them with Dash Rendar, in the Dash Rendar team, in a Beskar Mando team, Commander Luke. I mean, you could use, I use them with Lando lead and Wedge lead. There's so many ways to utilize these characters that I just think they really shine, and I, just, again, very biased because they're my favorite characters, but yeah, they're amazing. So they're number 1 and number 2, but there's a special shout out for Dash Rendar. He's a wannable, so he doesn't have the rebel tag, right? He's a scoundrel and a smuggler, but the Outrider is a rebel ship. So he's a wannable, right? He's a wannabe rebel. If I had to put him on this list, he's probably going to fit in probably above, probably right in this range, I think. I think, in the range of, and again, like the separation between Commander Luke and C-3PO, there's not a lot separating these characters. So Dash Rendar probably fits in. He's definitely below Admiral Raddus, in my opinion. The reason I say he's below Admiral Raddus is because to get Admiral Raddus, you're going to build part of his squadron. Whereas with Dash, he's just a character that then you need to build all of his Rex outside of it. I think Dash probably fits in, probably right in between C-3PO and Raddus. That's probably where I would throw him if I had to. He's really good. I got a great ship, but that's where the wannable fits in, right? The wannabe rebel kind of fits in right here. But that's the list, guys. Let me know what your thoughts are down below. As always, like and subscribe, leave comments, and let me know what faction you guys want me to do next. Hopefully you enjoy this ranking. I do apologize, it's a little bit of a longer video, but I think it's good content, and hopefully you guys do too. I love all of you. May the Force be with you, and I'll see you in the next video, guys. Cheers.